2020 elections continued this trend as every state except Maine supported co-partisan Senate and presidential candidates. Despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of states do not provide a straight ticket voting option on the ballot, most voters consistently offer support for only one party's candidates, even without the president on the ballot. These high levels of partisan loyalty are similar to that witnessed by voters casting party ballots during most of the 19th century, when voters often had little or no choice but to cast a straight ticket vote, as a result of the party ballot that was in use at the time. The greater focus on national political issues is not limited to congressional or gubernatorial elections, however. During the early 2010s, state legislators regularly campaigned for re-election by expressing either their support for or opposition to the Affordable Care Act, often simply referred to as Obamacare by Republicans, the health care reform legislation passed during President Barack Obama's first term. Although most state legislatures did not have jurisdiction over many of the issues that fell under the purview of the national health care legislation, that did not stop state legislative candidates from taking strong stances either in favor of or against this legislation during the campaign season. Indeed, many states introduced legislation that aimed to either prop up or cripple various aspects of the health care bill. One of the main reasons state legislators engaged in this behavior is that they recognized the utility in exploiting a highly nationalized and controversial policy that would resonate with their voters on Election Day based on their expressed support, or more often, opposition. In recent years, election scholars have studied these developments under the framework of election nationalization. By nationalization, we are referring to a phenomenon in which top-down forces, such as presidential vote choice or partisanship, inform voters' decisions in subnational elections rather than candidate-specific factors or local forces. In other words, voters have increasingly become less likely to take local or regional factors into account when choosing between different candidates on the ballot, and instead base their decisions about who to vote for or engage in political discussions on a broader range of considerations. For instance, voters may select local or statewide candidates based on specific national policies, for example, the Affordable Care Act or the creation of the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11, or who is currently occupying the White House. More specifically, our definition of nationalization aligns closely with that of Hopkins. National and local politics are fought over related dimensions. As a consequence, national political divisions infuse subnational politics, and political engagement is primarily national in orientation. While there are certainly alternative ways to define nationalization, our definition is consistent with other recent studies on nationalization in congressional elections. A key feature that sets our study apart, however, is that we explore the relationship between nationalization and politics across a wider swath of history. Most of the recent work on nationalization, for instance, explores this phenomenon largely in the context of elections held during the past few decades. On one hand, this makes a lot of sense, as the increased nationalization observed in recent decades reflects a pattern that is fundamentally different from the conventional wisdom that all politics is local. Nevertheless, we believe it is important to consider a longer time period when studying nationalized elections, as we and other congressional elections scholars define them, since they are not a new phenomenon. Elections during the mid to late 19th century, for instance, were widely acknowledged to be more partisan than nationalized affairs. Indeed, the candidate at the top of the ticket was generally perceived to influence down-ballot races, since voters were not allowed to pick and choose among various offices when voting, as is the case today. The extent of nationalization has now reached levels unseen since the 19th century, when the party ballot was in use and voters were generally unable to select among individual candidates.